Hello, welcome to the Africa Briefing podcast, where we discuss everything African.
Hello and welcome to the Africa Briefing podcast. My name is John Ofeyansa. I'm the publisher of Africa Briefing magazine. In the second episode of this podcast, I'd like to talk about the inhuman treatment being meted out to Africans in China, particularly those in Guangdong province. We all know the cordial at governmental levels, the cordial relations existing between China and Africa as a whole. China, has been quite instrumental in some of the current developments, economic developments taking place on the continent. It's common knowledge that China built the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, as a gift to Africa. China has assisted Africa in the construction of a lot of infrastructure. We talk about roads, bridges, railways, and so on and so forth. Where the West has refused to help, China has come in to assist by way of concessionary loans and so on and so forth. China currently is Africa's biggest trading partner. But at the micro level, macro level, at the man-to-man individual level, it appears the average Chinese has little or no regard for the African. This coronavirus that has gripped the whole world originated from China in the city called Wuhan. We all know that. And when the whole place was locked down, the whole country was locked down, the Africans resident in China were affected. They also went under quarantine. And China is now emerging from that crisis, has even relaxed the lockdown, the restrictions on movement imposed on the citizens or on the inhabitants of China. So how come that the Chinese are now beginning to target the Africans as the sole carriers of this coronavirus? To the extent that Africans are being forcibly ejected from their apartments. Those living or staying in hotels have been evicted. Africans are not even allowed to enter supermarkets to buy food. Africans are not even allowed to enter restaurants. Last night I spoke to a very good friend of mine who is a law lecturer at one of the leading universities in Beijing. And the account he gave me was heart-rending, to put it mildly. And this guy I'm talking about is married to a Chinese lady. And he told me that when they married a few years ago, his wife was pregnant. His Chinese wife was pregnant when they married. So on their wedding night, they went for their honeymoon. And when they arrived at the hotel at about 1 a.m., the hotel owners refused to accommodate this friend of mine because he was African. They refused to accommodate him because he had married a Chinese lady, and that the Chinese lady will be given accommodation in that hotel, and that my friend had to go and find alternate accommodation at that time of the night. If you don't call it racism, I don't know what racism is. His bride, the Chinese bride, who was heavily pregnant, protested. I said, look here, this is my husband. We just got married. I am pregnant by him. So why do you do this? They still stuck to their guns and refused my friend, this law lecturer, accommodation in that hotel. So on the first day, on their wedding night, they had to stay apart. So in the wake of this coronavirus pandemic, African nationals, who are even, some of whom are studying in one university called Sun Yat-sen in Guangzhou, have been made to undergo fresh coronavirus tests, even though they have not traveled outside the country. And there are cases where, again, even African men who are married to Chinese ladies were also demanded to take the tests, and that their Chinese families were left out. In some cases, the men were pulled out of their families and quarantined in hotels alone. And as I said earlier, there have been forced evictions of Africans from their various apartments and thrown into the streets, and even those with infant children. There are instances of where the passports of African nationals have been seized in stark violation of international practices and conventions. But my point is that what are our governments doing about this? Yes, the African Union chairman has sent a protest note to the Chinese government. The Nigerian foreign minister, invited the Chinese ambassador to Nigeria to discuss this. The leader of the Nigerian Senate has come out to attack this. And then the Association of African Diplomats in Beijing have also protested. But this is not enough. There are close to about 1 million Chinese living and working in Africa. And this racism that they are meting out against Africans in China is being practiced in some parts of Africa. Africa Briefing has run at least 3 stories over the past year of racist behavior by Chinese nationals in Africa towards Africans, towards their hosts. There was one instance where a restaurant owner and his Chinese staff, whipped a Kenyan waiter, for arriving late for work in Nairobi, Kenya. This cannot go on. And from the first-hand accounts I got from Beijing, when this racism, this latest instance of racism meted out by the Chinese South Africans, happened, most of these Africans contacted their embassies in Beijing, and the embassies could offer little or no help at all. Please, how could this happen? I recall at the outbreak of the coronavirus, a lot of countries repatriated their nationals from China. Italy did that, UK did that, America did that, at least to name these 3 countries. They all did that. What did the African governments do? Right? And talking about this corona, today on the news, I heard that China reported 108 new infections. And these new infections are mainly Chinese who had returned from abroad. And again, one report, authentic report, credible report I received, or that of the 108 new infections, only 20% were foreigners. But that does not give any excuse for the Chinese citizens to treat Africans in China this way. I quite recall before the collapse of the Soviet Union, there were a lot of African students on scholarships in the old Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc countries. And these students were offered official protection from any racial harassment. I know that for a fact. Okay, so my beef is with the African leadership. What is the African government, are the African government doing to help solve the situation? Doing to make sure that this racist attitude, racist treatment meted out to our brothers and sisters in China comes to a stop. I'm calling on African governments just to stop mere posturing, to stop rhetoric, and take concrete action to make sure that our fellow Africans, our brothers and sisters living, studying, and working in China are safe. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And for more news on Africa, authentic news on Africa, please go to the Africa Briefing website, www.africabriefing.org. Until next time, keep hope alive and stay safe.
You have been listening to the Africa Briefing podcast.